Number 1, let's consider some nuts and bolts for sermon planning. That's on your outline. Number 2, let's consider some ways to look at a text and maybe to look at textual versus topical preaching and all that stuff. Number 3, let's consider some principles for interpreting Scripture, because that actually becomes a big deal. Okay? Number 4, let's consider some sources for biblical scholarship. And 5, consider some ideas for better preaching that are kind of broad. And I will keep a couple surprises for that segment. Okay? So here we go. Consider some nuts and bolts. Nut number 1. If you're preaching, I trust and hope you have a schedule for study and preparation. And if you don't, you're not a very good preacher. And that's the only time I'll say that today. So if you're thinking, well, I'll get it done in the evenings when my kids are there so I can pay attention to the TV show while I'm doing it, that, I know a pastor who really did fairly poorly in a church. Great guy, great human being. Somebody at one point said, when do you write your sermons? And he said, well, Saturday night if I don't have any other responsibilities. Well, okay. I'm just saying, you need a schedule. So I don't know what yours is. I do recommend early in the week because then you can brew. Some of you write your sermons Fridays or Saturdays. Bless you if you do it. But I will say that if you have a chance to write and think and pray and plan on Tuesday, not only can you bring other parts into the plan because you have time to go schedule and talk to things or people, you can go do some homework if there's a topic you almost got down but you need a little more time on. But most importantly, you can brew. I was at a church one time where this pastor is a Pentecostal church. I was there with friends. And the pastor says, folks, I'm really nervous this morning when I woke up because I don't study for sermon. I believe that's quenching the spirit. I was already kind of having, that was a bad start. I just about had an accident. And so he says, but God always gives me something. The Lord, that's the phrase, that's Pentecostal church, not God, but the Lord always gives me, a message. But the Lord hasn't given me a message all week, and I was real anxious. So I was asking God this morning in the shower, Lord, why haven't you given me a word? Because I want to be faithful to my people, and yet he doesn't study. But you haven't given me a word. And then he said, this pastor says, the Lord just released me to this message. And I'm so glad this morning to be able to share it with you. And he proceeded to share a completely vacuous, completely confusing, drifting, inarticulate tour of all of the thoughts he's had in the last few months for I don't know how long it was. I do remember praying, God, get him done. Please stop him, break the sound system. What do you have to do to make this man quit talking? Because he just didn't stop. And I also want to make that point to you. I know some people in your church family are really frantic over your time. I get it. And sometimes that's pure stupidity. There'll be somebody in your church who's stuck. A sermon is 20 minutes, period. Doesn't matter what you say. But others may be saying, length matters because you're not giving something substantive. If you're giving something substantive enough, a lot of times they can live through it. Now, Bobby McCann was the church I finally started going to when I was late teens. I didn't go much before that. Bob McCann sat in the back, not really all the way in the back. No, it wasn't. It was about halfway. But anyway, Bob sat there. The sermon needed to be done by 10 till. Otherwise, we weren't going to make it out by noon. So if the pastor was preaching at 10 till, Bobby would start just agitated. A little teeny church where you could see his agitation. And if the pastor wasn't done by 10:51, Bobby needed to stretch. And I actually was there on the morning when Bob stretched twice. And the second time, he just as might as well thrown a hymnal at the pastor. We were stopping. All right? So I get that. But, you ever heard that little quick, it's cute if you If you want me to speak for 2 minutes, please give me 2 weeks' notice. But if you want me to speak for an hour, I'm ready anytime. Good principle is if you work something, you can say it concisely. A good example is in the life of Jesus. He lived in an oral culture, and much of the notes that were taken by people listening. You can get this great, you can live in oral tradition. If you want to know how oral teachers taught brilliantly, read Jesus in Matthew 5. When he sets up this, you've heard that it was said, but I say to you. You've heard that it was said, but I say to you. And this magic comes out. You realize he has pondered him and worked this up until he's able to walk in and go, let me put this concise. And in 5 quick, you can read that section of Matthew 5 in probably a minute and a half. And most people, literally, if you ask them today, if they've never been churchgoers, they can probably tell you a couple, 2 or maybe, of the 5 examples he gives. And you've heard it said, don't kill anybody, but Jesus says, well, don't even hate them. How'd you know that? Because they still remember, because he put that into it. And that was brilliant, and he could carry that. Scholars do this big wrestling match over why Luke's Sermon on the Mount is so different from Matthew's, and there are a lot of answers to that question. I'm not going to bother you with that kind of scholarship. But one of the answers is he likely never preached that sermon the same in any different setting. And that's really significant, because it tells you he had messages he carried with him that he had refined till they were knife sharp as far as clarity and the ability to communicate quick and to the point. So there's a value to shortness, but that probably comes out of planning. There's also a value to density. If people say that sermon affected me, that was substantive, you gave me something. Now that's going to come from planning too. So I just want to say schedule. For me, it happens to be Tuesdays. It's the best day for me to study. There are exceptions. Of course, sometimes when I've got a commitment on a Tuesday, I have to move the day to Monday or Wednesday. And still on Thursday, and still on Friday, I'm still working on it. Now, I happen to use a style where I memorize. No, I don't memorize word for word. I don't write a manuscript and then memorize it. So, now, this is my email. That's an R and that's an R. rbrakenly@gmail.com. I put that up there because I want you to have it. I want you to use it. If you have follow-up today,